Yeah, the cloud thingy.
Towards the
There it
cloud.
is.
Yep. And you
All
have
right.
it.
All right. So I'm still new. So you were a doctor. If I say your name right, Akilah Cadet. Is it Cadet or Cadet?
Cadet. Very good, Paul. Cadet. Yeah.
Well, my wife says Tarjay, so I was like,
Yeah.
I'm 50-50 right.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and Tarjay is it's for the elite. When you say Tarjay, that means you're part of the culture. And you get there. But no, I'm the product of the transatlantic slave trade. So I'm part French. And so that's how Cadet is Cadet.
Oh wow.
So my
Okay.
dad is from Haiti. My mom's side is from Louisiana. So I'm like also super voodoo. But I
Oh
say like
wow.
I'm part of the transatlantic slave trade because it's all the touch points. So the Caribbean, you had over on the other side. In this case, the colonizers were the French. And then all of it mashed up in
Hmm.
America, Louisiana Purchase. On that side. So yeah, I'm right up there with Tarjay.
Wow. It's interesting that since you mentioned that, and I don't really have a structure. I'm still figuring out the whole podcast thing.
There's
What do
nothing
you
to
th-
figure out.
what do you
Conversation is the best.
what do you think about this whole before I start, there was a quote from your grandma. So because maybe I'm a little old fashioned. It says to my grandma who taught me how to cuss and never to be afraid of my superpower. So, are there any restrictions on this? I just want to know. I wanted to be
No,
respectful in advance. So, what do
no,
you think
no,
of this bullshit about American exceptionalism? How we're the best of the best because we have flags and bald eagles and we pray to it and we sing to it and we have guns. Because I'm really sick of that shit.
no.
It's only really
Yeah.
been great for 21-year-old white men. What do you think about that?
Oh, I have so many thoughts, which is, why my book, the
Yes.
title's White Supremacy is all around, right? White supremacy is all around. So I always remind folks that, do you know who the founding fathers were? Like, because none of them looked like me. They weren't. They were heterosexual, cisgendered, non-disabled, a lot of them land owning, a lot of them owned enslaved people, right? And that's how America was started. America was made for their lives. And everything
Mhm.
else has been a let's add, let's add, let's add, including white women, including gay white men, including disabled white men, right? So
Mhm.
when we talk about America, we have to talk about colonization. And
Mhm.
similar to what I was talking about with the transatlantic slave trade, we had the OG UK British Empire. They were mad with everything that was happening there. So they're like, you know what? We're going to come and do things better. We're going to change the metric system. We're going to say things that don't make sense. We're going to do things completely different. It's not going to be about religion. It's going to be about the land of the free and having opportunities for, again, the heterosexual, cisgender, non disabled white guys. And so when you have something as foundational as the founding fathers, foundational to what happens in America, that's why we have this exceptionalism that's happening, this Go America. It's further emboldened with what we're seeing today with the MAGAs, the Make America Great Againers, right? That whole
Make
crew.
America white again is what I call that. That's what it
I
really
mean,
is.
and what a lot of people don't realize is that that slogan has been used over and over and over in history, including with Nazi Germans,
Yeah,
right? In
Hitler.
Nazi Germany, Hitler, right? The Third Reich, all that stuff. It's just a rinse and repeat of history. But and really, to understand why America is the way it is, you have to understand white supremacy. And a lot of people don't understand white supremacy. You know how I know? They're freaking out with the horrible murder of Renee Good.
Hmm.
And they're realizing, like, if a white person also wants to dismantle white supremacy, so opportunity
Mm.
for immigrants, and immigrants that are being attacked aren't white immigrants that are being attacked, right? They're realizing that if you do the work to dismantle white supremacy, you're putting something on the line.
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah,
Because this is my opinion. I think that Charlie Kirk was a racist piece of shit. Okay, that's what he
that's
was.
many people's opinions.
Yeah,
Yes.
he was. I mean, he talked about the Great White Replacement theory. He said Harris was Black Hillary. The blacks are taking the whites' jobs. If the pilot's black, I mean, the guy was a walking racist trope. I mean, he was.
Oh yeah.
And I found it interesting that over 40,000 people die from gun violence and all they get are thoughts and prayers, right? Ahmaud Arbery gets chased down by three white guys, which we all knew were MAGA, because
Mhm.
the audacity of a black man taking a jog, he must have been committing a crime, right? Because he's a black man. But it almost feels like to what you're saying is and I said this about a year ago. I really think in this country, the only thing that's going to change people is when white people get a fraction of an inch of what it's like to be black since 1619. And I feel like with Renee Good and with Charlie Kirk on the far right, for once their privilege was kind of shit on. And when he said that dead Americans was worth, I think, the cost of the Second Amendment, he thought it would be other people, immigrants, brown people, black people, minorities. But the fact that it was a white man that supported the white male patriarchy, they lost their minds. Am I oversimplifying it?
No, you're not. But I would, this is the first chapter of my book is White Women Are Exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for a reason, but white people really are
Karens.
exhausting. Yeah, the Karens of the world. Yeah. Well, the second chapter of my book is because these Karens just turned into terrorists. So I have a Karens chapter. But the the thing to note here is that again, none of this is new. And so when we go back to 1619 that you just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
there are abolitionists
Mm-hmm.
that were also doing this work of dismantling white supremacy, who also lost their lives. John Brown is one of them. There, and the list goes on and on. You can go into the civil rights movement, Jim Crow era. Lots of white people lost their lives dismantling white supremacy. Um, but those
That was
stories aren't
that was a
necessarily
hundred years. That wasn't just a couple. That was a that was a century.
right. But we also can go back to 2017 when the "You Will Not Replace Us," march happened in Charlottesville. The
Mm-hmm.
only person who was murdered in the white supremacist attack of going into the counter protest
Mm-hmm.
was a white woman. Her name was Heather. So we've done all of this. It's also happened in modern times. Now, people will argue that things have changed since the murder of George Floyd and people are more aware of things now. And whatever, that's fine too. But none
Mm-hmm.
of this is new. None of this new. So let's just talk about white supremacy so I can better answer your question. One, I would love white supremacy. I would love it. I would love all the benefits of white supremacy. I would love to drive my car and get pulled over and be told to slow down or just get a ticket, not think I'm going to be arrested, murdered, or maimed. I would love to go to the emergency room as a Black woman and a Black disabled woman and have my pain be believed and not be viewed as a drug seeker. I would love to get a job for no reason and just get promoted.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be able to go into a five-star hotel or restaurant and be greeted the same way. I would love to be next to a group of Black people and not be assumed that all of us are together. I would love to have those benefits
Oh
of,
God.
living in
I
you know, all people could live in a neighborhood that is good for them. That's not next to, any type of pollution. That's not next to or in a neighborhood that doesn't have a grocery store, right? Those are the benefits of white supremacy. White supremacy is you, white people, you get the social determinants of health. And the social determinants of health are
mm.
housing, access to transportation, equitable wage, health insurance, the opportunities to thrive
It,
and live a healthy life.
And you know what's interesting about that? Because I see videos of, listen, here's the reality. It's going to have to be my demographic that says this, because black people have been saying this for hundreds of years and nobody wants to listen. So it's going to have to be me, whether I like it or not. With great power comes great responsibility. When I see white people say, oh, look, I'm poor. I live in a trailer. I date my sister. I don't have privilege. Okay. Was your grandparent hanging from a tree outside of a church? Was your great grandparents in somebody's will? Do you have to give the talk? Do people cross the street? Was your house redlined? Is your house valued at a different price? Like, they'd shut up. Privilege is how you're
Well,
treated, but they think because they're poor that they don't have privilege because they're poor. And it seems like a lot of white people have a really hard time getting their brains around that.
so case in point, the low income or poor white person family, uh, they still are white. They still get the benefits of the historical implications of America. My
Right.
ancestors came here enslaved. Your ancestors either enslaved people or they didn't, and both are fine. But you have to think about what happens as a result of the history in America. The stereotype for someone like me is I have to be a single mother. I'm again, a drug seeker. What do I know? I can't be educated. How could I be a doctor? Those things aren't necessarily for me. But that
Hmm.
same person who's low income can walk into a space or place and still get more respect for me because they get the benefits of having the impact of enslavement in this country, which is being in a position of power and privilege, ownership, right? So even with the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of slavery, we know slavery has changed into different ways, and a lot of that is in, our unfortunate like criminal justice system, our prison
Yep.
system, industrial complex. That's where a lot of the stuff is, because of the 13th Amendment. But when you think about how they are able to be in a position of power, because when the Emancipation Proclamation happened and white people, the enslavers, lost their property, they received money for losing their property. Their property was my ancestors. So, regardless of white people had it or not, they had already been set up to succeed. Now, what happened on the other side? So, when the enslaved folks were no longer enslaved, majority of them became sharecroppers, or they
Mm.
became people who were providing a domestic service, or they became people who were providing some type of physical service, construction, trash, whatever. Same thing. Those jobs don't pay the same, right? They don't have the same opportunity. But a white person stereotype today, no matter their income, is they are in positions of power and privilege. They are deserving. So much so, when the majority of white people who are on SNAP in this country,
Yep.
majority of people on SNAP in this country are white people. The message
Yep.
is still immigrants, black and brown people are draining the system. So
It,
that's the thing that's really important.
why? And this is something that I try to talk about. Maybe you can, because why is it that when I see, right, we got, when you look at this country, you got 14 million kids that go to school hungry, 42 million people on government
Mm-hmm.
assistance, 40,000 people die from gun violence, three people own half the wealth, two-thirds live paycheck to paycheck. But somehow white people in my dad's from Indiana, trailer park trash America, that are racist hillbillies that inbreed. Why is it that they always find something to bitch and moan and like, oh, it's a tampon in a bathroom. Tell me what's a man and what's a woman. What is with them to have this constant need to be the victim of something? Do you understand that better than I do?
So it's all about power and control. And you've been saying it really well. It's about the privilege to not have to deal with a trans person, the privilege to not have to, they don't want anything to disrupt their power and privilege. So
Hmm.
white supremacy is saying a white person is on a pedestal and superior to form of supremacism. So superior to everyone else.
Hmm.
When your systems, cultures, society, structures, the workplace, the hotel, the cafe, all of those things further empower that, that's why a white person is going to get mad if a trans person is using whatever bathroom they want to use, right? Because it goes back
Yeah.
into power and control. It's those types of things, but it's also being able to have the power to make the decision to allow someone to come into a space or place,
Do you think
right?
if, well, so let me ask you a question though. This is, if Barack Obama wasn't a black man, would we
Mm-hmm.
have still gotten Donald Trump if he was a white
Yes.
man? You think so?
Yeah. Because, yeah, honestly, I mean, yes, the math is there. And I always
Hmm.
want to remind people Barack Obama is also half white. So you were also
Right.
hating yourself, right? That's there, right? It's
Yeah.
important note. But history shows you that power and control is really important. So even if we didn't have Barack Obama, by 2030, the majority of our younger demographics, kids, youth, 18, will be minority majority. Minority is a horrible word. I like to say historically excluded, right? Because it's not our
Hmm.
faults about any of this stuff. And so when you have BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, becoming the
Hmm.
majority for our young group, that makes the older generation of white folks who know who Ruby Bridges is because they lived during that time, right? And they know all about Jim Crow. They're like, oh no, we don't want that, right?
And COVID just passed away. She was 15, a
Yeah,
black woman in 1955.
yeah, yeah, yep. And she was the first person before Rosa Parks to not move from her seat. They actually used her story and Rosa Parks purposely because Rosa Parks had a lighter complexion.
Oh,
Claudette
wow.
Cloven had a darker complexion, and white people have more sympathy for people who look like me than someone
Huh.
who had that complexion. And that's also part of white supremacy. But so like, I mean, when you're getting into these nuts and bolts of things, it just comes back down to power and control. So because we are in a culture of America that always wants white majority and superiority and power, that's the threat and fear. So when you have kids, so the eight up to 18, kids to 18 that are primarily will be majority BIPOC, that means eventually the adults, the people who have power and control, will be BIPOC. And white people don't want that. And so this is
Yeah.
why this is happening to change things. That's also why abortion is a big topic. It's about
Mhm.
power and control,
White
right?
babies.
So, yeah, exactly.
Which is ironic because in Texas, women have a 56% increased sepsis rate. It's twice for white women and 3 times for black women.
So it goes back, we'll go back to the SNAP benefits, right? So SNAP benefits, majority of folks are getting SNAP benefits are white folks. Now they don't have access to abortion. They don't have access in certain states to contraceptives or whatever they're using for family planning. They don't have access to that. And they want that. Why? Because then more white people will be born,
Yeah.
right?
So, and that's what I've been preaching because, and I'm not a Democrat or a Republican because I'm very like probably liberal, I guess, social issues. But for me, I find like the Democratic Party isn't fighting like I want them to for me right now. So I'm kind of like
Yeah.
middle of the road. But I feel like they're missing the point. And it seems like what I watched, and I don't watch a lot of news. Everybody seems to say that like, okay, it was the economy, right? And I'm like, okay, look,
Hmm.
these people went to the voting booth, voted for a rapist, a child molester, a convicted felon, insurrection, calls women fat, calls them piggy, you know, white supremacy, racism, not ready to black people, paying $15,000 to execute black people. I'm like, yeah, but I just want cheap eggs. Well, it's
Right.
bullshit, right? Because they were never going to vote for the black woman. Am I completely wrong? Because it feels like America still doesn't want to have that conversation. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. So the other thing that you're talking about without maybe knowing what you're talking about is called intersectionality. So, intersectionality is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. She's a lawyer, a Black woman lawyer, and it is all about the intersections of our identities and
Hmm.
who we are. So, think about it this way: if we have and that determine our lived experience. So, if we have a bus going down a street, on the bus is like everyone in America on this bus. If
Mm-hmm.
that first intersection is disabled people, then disabled people would have to get off the bus. If the next intersection is people who make $50,000 or less, they have to get off the bus. The next intersection is anyone who identifies as part of the LGBTQ plus community, they would get off. The next intersection is women. The next, so if you go down to that final destination of who's on that bus, it would be white guys that
Mm-hmm.
would be on the bus. And the reason why we talk about the intersections is it determines our lived experience. So, for example, I am a Black person, I am a woman, I am disabled, and those three things are part of my intersectionality, my identity. As a
Mm.
result of that, I experience discrimination because I am a Black person, because I am a woman, and because I am disabled. So, our intersectionality determines how we are able to show up in the world with our power and privilege, and also how we're
Mm.
treated in the world with our power and privilege. The more intersectionality you have, so you're getting off on those earlier stops, the less
Mm-hmm.
power and privilege you have. Least amount of intersectionality you have towards the end of the destination, the more power and privilege you have, right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about you, Paul, white guy. I'm assuming you are a hetero cis
Nope.
white guy,
24,
right?
24 years been married. Yep.
Yeah, to a lovely, I'm sure, a lovely woman because you're a lovely person, right? So
Thank you.
you have all the power in the world to not do anything that you're doing right now,
Yes.
anything on social media, any YouTube. You don't have to do any of this shit. You don't have
Nope.
to because you have the power and privilege to do it. Some of them were probably your former friends. Some of them are probably in your family somewhere or another that doesn't want to do anything. They're just like, this thing will blow over or whatever. But you've made
Mm-hmm.
a choice to use your power and privilege to say, this shit is fucked. And the
Yep.
only people who can actually change it are the ones who are at the end of that road in the bus. And that's me. So I'm going to use my power and privilege to do that. You've lost friends. You probably have people in your family who are like, what's happening, or super supportive, depending on how you grew up. But the probability of you losing things as a result of using your
Yeah.
intersectionality
In
and your
business.
power and privilege and business, right? It's the same reason why I lost a lot of business because I believe in the liberation of Palestinians, right? And I
Yeah.
hear me out, believe in the liberation of everyone who's oppressed. I have similar issues with my own like culture, my country of Haiti, that also is going through a lot of stuff. We're seeing things being repeated all over the world and lots of ways of how supremacism shows up. There is a more superior group. In America, it happens to be white people. Around the world, it could be Israel. Around the world, it could be England. So it shows up in lots of different ways.
It's interesting because I have this conversation, and I happen to grow up in a Baptist church. I don't consider myself a religious person. I like faith because I think religion is about controlling people. I
Yep.
find it rich because one of the things when I grew up is my dad was very abusive, right? And then every Sunday he would go to church and praise Jesus. Oh, he
Well,
was
how else
just,
are you going to be absolved of the sins of
I
being
know.
abusive, right?
And that really, like, what I've said is, how am I supposed to say I'm going to love my neighbor and all these people that have crosses and Bibles and quote scripture, because anybody can do that, right? And just watch my neighbors get treated like absolute dog shit. But
Mhm.
I'm not going to talk about it because Uncle Bob might be upset. Well, then screw Uncle Bob. Because I guess maybe I'm being too simple here because I'm just my wife is like, you're too, like, I'm very transparent. I am who I am, right? Yeah, I'm not going to sit down with my Uncle Bob and say, hey, you know what? We're family. I'm not going to talk about it, even though you voted for a rapist and a pedophile. Hey, it's just different. I don't want to sit next to you. Like, I don't understand why it seems like people, well, I guess this is more of a question. I went a long way around this. How is these people calling this a Christian nation? Because I don't care if you're an atheist, agnostic, worship a grasshopper, marry your dog. I don't give a damn. It's not my
Mhm.
life. How
Mhm.
could you call this a Christian nation when was it like 1.4 million slaves died on the Middle Passage that were fed to fucking sharks? And then
Mhm.
we whipped them and put salt in their wounds, hung them from trees, used
Mhm.
their babies as bait, cut out
Mhm.
the fetuses, the three-fifths
Rape them.
clause. Right.
Yeah.
But we're a
Yeah.
Christian nation and
Right.
Jesus gave us the Second Amendment. How do these people justify it and say that this is a Christian nation when we've treated
Yeah.
every demographic that doesn't look like me like absolute crap?
So I was raised in between Baptist and Catholic churches. So
Oh,
I got the good ones. And I'm not religious. My mom is super religious. I am not. My dad's an atheist. But both of them went to Catholic school. Which is it's just really, really interesting. But
hmm.
what's important what's important to note is that when African and Black people were enslaved in America, on Sunday was the day off. Sunday off, church, but Sunday was the day off for enslaved people. Enslaved people could go to the same church as white people, but once the Emancipation Proclamation happened, they were no longer allowed in the church. So how godly is that? How Christian is that? And that's why we have this history of Black churches coming up, and you saw a real big uptick with Jim Crow era because we could no longer be in the same church to worship them. Now they would, as time changed, eventually you could have the Bible, but they really didn't want people to read, but they wanted to control the narrative. And one way to control the narrative is to control religion and use religion as a form of colonization. So,
Yes.
to your listeners out there, we are both here in the Bay Area in California. I'm in Oakland, California. Um, that you had to learn about the Mission Trail because that was just part of in
Yeah.
California. You had to learn about the Mission Trail. That
Serrano, or yeah.
yes, very good. Daly City, Mission Highway 1, right? So you had to learn about it, but what you didn't learn as a kid is that that was colonization. You're taking indigenous people, you are taking Latinx, Hispanic people, and you are
Hmm.
colonizing them into a way, shape, culture, form, right? And that is what religion does. It's a form of power and control. Now, that doesn't mean
Hmm.
that there aren't churches, there aren't people who understand the message of the Bible or God. And those are the folks who are pushing back to say, like, I'm not MAGA Christian. That's not us. We accept everyone, regardless of
Hmm.
how they identify. We aren't going to pick and choose because that's not what God did. That's not what Jesus did. And it goes on and on. But Christianity is used as a way for power and control. In fact, Christianity is the reason why we have Zionism. Christian people were pushing Zionism to
The
happen.
KKK was ran by Christians too.
Exactly. Right. So, and all of that is power and control. There's wonderful books and stories and podcasts that are out there to go further in depth of how it works, but it's all about power and control. That's, I mean, look, religion has also turned into cults, which has also turned into mass murders, which is also, there's a lot of things that go into it because when you are in a position to believe something for
Eh,
encouragement and hope and
yeah.
community, that's a beautiful thing. But
It,
when that encouragement and hope and community is harm, that's a problem.
and I think, see, that's why the whole abortion thing is a bunch of bullshit, in my opinion. Well,
Yeah.
it's not my opinion. They don't care if children are shot in schools, if they're shot by ICE on the streets. They don't care if they starve to death, if they have health care, a living wage, affordable housing, clean air, clean
Food,
water, food.
right?
But we're pro-life. But they don't care if the president rapes women or assaults little children or leads to the
Yeah.
death of 5 officers. But we're pro-life. But they're not. It's just, and I feel like a lot of this has started in the white evangelical church. They teach about white Jesus, and they seem to be stuck. And I've read the Bible, and I'm reading the books of the Apocrypha, right? They seem to be stuck on Leviticus and Deuteronomy, hell, fire, brimstone. You're all sinners. You're all going to hell. And I had this conversation with my better half the other night, like this whole thing about being gay. Who
Mhm.
cares? Why? Again, it goes back to people not having critical thinking. Do I go to church and say, we're going to talk about being divorced and how it's a sin? We're going to talk about how you shouldn't watch pornography. We're going to talk about you shouldn't bear false witness. Why? Again, it goes back to what you said. It's about control. They want to fear
Yeah.
white people into thinking that abortion and gay are the worst sins,
Yeah.
but somehow God came down from heaven and saved his little orange ear, but ignored the Holocaust, ignored Jim Crow, ignored slavery, ignored the Middle Passage, ignored Wounded Knee, the Trail of Tears, Asian
Mhm.
internment camps. God just sat by while millions of people died. But the little rapist orange ear, I'm going to save him because, who am I to question God?
There's a great book. Exactly, 100%. There's a great book. It's called Flag and the Cross. And it talks about everything that we're discussing right here. So supremacism, white supremacy, um, how certain
Is that
and
like Jesus or John Wayne? Is it like that?
it's more so going into the history of how religion has turned into white supremacy in
Oh,
certain
okay.
sects, right? And how it shows up and tying it to MAGA and how it happens now. It's a great read. It's a you got to take some, depending on how you identify, you got to take some breaks, from it with how it shows up and people's religious background. But it's just how white supremacy works. So the whole message of America is what, like the American dream, right? People want the American dream. The American dream is the house, the picket fence, the husband, the wife, the 2.5 kids, the dog, right? The
Two
whole that whole
goldfish.
scenario, right? Exactly. And America, right next to religion and right next to MAGA, they all have the best manipulative marketing and branding schemes because the American dream is for white people. The American
Hmm.
dream is for people who make money. Now, are there
Hmm.
immigrants who make the American dream? Sure. Are there black people, brown people who make the American dream? Absolutely. But it's not readily available. It's not readily accessible. When we think about when we think about the wealth gap between black and white people, a lot of that is centered around what? Housing and having access to housing. And a lot of that is centered around what? The GI Bill and how black people couldn't
Yeah.
get the same, right? And the list goes on and on. So there's that just for Americans. And then for those who do immigrate here, not everyone is Mr. Chow or something like that. That's not that they're not going to come up to a scenario where they can have this wealth uh, forever momentarily. That's not the case for everyone. MAGA, great marketing and branding. So much so that people would say in the same sentence, Donald Trump is president when Biden was, and
Hmm.
also Biden is running the company as president. They'll say that in the same sentence. That can't be the same thing. But that's the manipulation, the marketing, the branding that is in
Hmm.
there. That's why Truth Social and things like that are very successful, right? So
Yeah.
then you bring it to religion. Religion is wonderful marketing and branding. This thing happened, and there's 17 million different examples of how this thing happened in this place that people are fighting over right now between Israel and Palestine, right? like all of it, marketing and branding, marketing and branding.
Well, it is, and I guess I don't want innocent people, like, just to go on that topic, in Israel or Palestine. I don't want innocent people to die anywhere. But what
No,
I don't
because you believe in humanity,
Right,
Paul.
but what I don't
Yeah.
understand is how could the part of this, like people like Michael Rappaport, I don't know what happened to that guy. He went off the loony bin. He has gone cuckoo, cuckoo.
He used to be so like, yes. And we were
I
so
know.
like, particularly as a Black community, we were very in support of him. But Nicki Minaj, not,
Yeah.
it's similar things that we're seeing happening with, and it's also white people who were once viewed as liberal and now they're very
Yeah.
MAGA, 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 right?
Well, so I guess what I don't what Hamas did obviously was bad, right? But
Yeah.
you don't get to say, okay, that's like saying that America is a terrorist state because of January 6th. And that's what you're saying, right? But you can't say, yeah, I'm standing with Israel, but at the same time murder 60,000 people, destroy 85% of their country and say, "Oh, they're just defending themselves from something that happened 3 years ago." Like that's genocide. Like I don't want any people to die, but I don't understand how, like, I criticize both parties equally, right? Because
Yeah.
Jeffries has taken 800,000, Adam Schiff has taken $6 million from APAC, right? So APAC sending money over here, they get, and a lot of people just don't do a lot of research. They fund
Mhm.
Israel. We create
Mhm.
20,000 jobs in this country to fund the projects, whether it's Amazon, Google, robots, AI, drones, and then those companies, which is about what 11,000 companies, or 1,100 companies. Guess who they donate to? Ah, yes, the politicians. So we're literally funding a genocide, but we keep saying we want to stand with Israel. I just don't understand what this love affair is with Israel. Is it just money? Because it seems like as long as they're getting donations, they don't care about, what was it, 20,000 kids that have died, that have been murdered from Israel?
And none of these numbers are going to be
Well,
accurate
that's what
because
I've
for
heard.
so
I
many
mean,
reasons. Yeah, no, no, no.
yeah.
I'm mentioning it's going to be worse at some point in time. Um, Zionism is a hell of a drug. And so that's how
Can
there's a
you
lot of
define that?
money.
Because I don't think I fully understand the exact. I've heard the term, and I've heard a lot of people use it like in a wrong term. Can you just so people
I'm
understand
going
what
to
that is?
do it very, very high level.
Okay.
So, um, Zionism means that uh, Israel exists as a state. So it was a movement that happened. There's a lot,
Hmm.
like, there's so many moving parts to it. I encourage people to search Nakba and know what the Nakba was. That was essentially what's happening now of moving Palestinians from their land across the world and how it turned into the Gaza Strip of what is there today. So, in short, Zionism means Israel exists, we have this place, and we also have superiority to people. There's
Hmm.
superiority to people in Israel, there's superiority to people in Judaism, there's superiority to people with Palestinians. So those are like kind of the easier big buckets to talk about.
Just based on how they're born.
So let me say it another way. Zionism is white supremacy in America
That's
for
what I was getting.
Israel and
It
Palestine.
seems very
Yeah,
similar.
it's very similar because and it also ties to what we saw happen in Germany too. So let's talk about Adolf Hitler, marketing and
I
branding,
mean, we're
right?
in Nazi Germany. We have to stop kidding ourselves. We're there.
We are in a fascist authoritarianism state. We have a regime
Concentration
that we are
camps.
dealing with, right? So many things, right? Uh, so many things. But it's important to note that Adolf Hitler told everyone, and then through his message, through his power and control of how he also got into the government, the German government, the message was everyone had to look like what? Do you remember?
Oh, you're gonna ask me the
Blonde
wrong
hair,
question. And
blonde hair,
blue eyes,
and
right?
blue eyes.
Yeah, that's right.
What color hair did Adolf Hitler have?
It was black.
And what color eyes do you have?
That I don't know.
You have brown eyes. He was not what he said everyone needed to be in Germany, but
Hmm.
people believed him because of the power and control. So if we move it to Israel, there is a
Hmm.
belief of a lighter complexion. It's not so blonde hair, blue eyes, but it's a lighter complexion to look a certain way. even though they
Hmm.
all come from the same place.
Hmm.
Right. And so who do we see with Palestinians in Palestine? We see people who have my complexion or even darker. We see people who are lighter. We see people with blue eyes and blonde hair and brown. We see lots of different things that are there, but it's all about supremacism and it's all
Hmm.
about superiority, right? And so the thing that is true of the world is supremacism. There are places where that doesn't necessarily happen, and those places aren't really
It,
touched. We're going into more
it,
tribal, organizations where there is respect and law and order that's there. It's everywhere.
because it feels to me with APAC, the way that people worship Israel because it's biblical, I could tell you this, the God that I believe in would never justify murdering 20,000 children. But there, it almost seems like on some weird level, Israel somehow almost is like a shadow government in the United States. Does that make sense? Or am I being like,
So
I'm not a
no,
conspiracy theorist, but it feels that way on many levels because it doesn't matter what they do. They just like, oh, just keep giving them money. They have universal health care in Israel. We don't even have it here. We're funding their health care.
we are the only developed country that doesn't have universal health care. Right. And it's an eye roll, all the things on and on. And I do not get me
Well,
started
but
on
we're
that.
the best country in the world. We're the
Go
best.
America. Right. So there's a couple
Yeah.
things that are happening. Yeah. Go America. So there's a couple things that are happening, which is to your point earlier, we had Uvalde. That was a horrible school shooting. We've already the amount of school shootings we've had. We can go back to Sandy Hook. And Sandy Hook is
Columbine.
really important because it was primarily white kids, majority white kids. And that was horrific. And
Mm-hmm.
America told you then that they didn't care about kids. They didn't care about kids at all
Or morality.
or morality. So it's easy to sign your name on a missile that will bomb those same children that America pays for.
Well, it's the
And
same
that
thing after
is
January 6th, right? We normalize political violence. But then at the
right.
same time, a 37-year-old mother of a 6-year-old who says, I'm not mad at you, that tries to avoid an ICE cop and shot 3 times in the head, all of a sudden she's a domestic terrorist.
Point blank.
We've normalized it.
And a threat, right?
Yeah, of course.
But a white guy burned a synagogue a couple days ago. No one's really talking about that, right?
I don't
So
think I heard that one.
yeah, exactly. The way of picking and choosing. And also to your point, the House passed the subsidies for Affordable Care Act, which is the closest thing we have to universal health care. People are not talking about that as much as they're not talking about the Epstein files. All of these things are like smoke mirror, smoke mirror, smoke mirror, so much. But the thing about APAC is that they have so much power and privilege. It's rooted in white supremacy, where there's someone that you think is good, great, and true. Let's say Jeffries, you know, and you're going to do all of these things and you're going to have like the filibuster and blah, 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 but you're getting APAC money. So there's still power and control to keep the power that is there in Israel. There's
Yeah.
also, what we're seeing in Venezuela when we're talking about oil, right? It's all about power and control. Now, the differentiating factor I will say that's happening right now is that America is losing its luster that
Yes.
the world has lost, which is why we're going to see things that America's not going to know how to process. Like last year, we started to see it last year. Tourism decreased, right? And
Vegas
it's
is down
affecting,
20%, and they're the bellwether. I've been there
and
twice. It is I wouldn't say ghost town. It is not what Vegas was.
yeah, I was forced to go because Beyonce made me go to the last show
She did.
that was there. I can't stand it. Cannot stand Vegas. But like I was having a conversation with the hotel I was staying at. They're like, we are so happy she's here. And she did a couple
Yep.
shows because it was bringing in what they were used to seeing, right? Canadians don't want to come here. Mexico, the Mexicans, they don't want to come here just to even travel. People from around the world, Japan, they don't want to come here. So World Cup is happening this year in the
Maybe.
North America. Well, it's happening. It's happening because there's going to be
Well, it may not be
power.
here because I heard they had like over 15,000 people cancel their tickets.
It's still happening on this side. So it's
Okay.
Canada, Mexico, and America, right? Whatever's happening with America, that's fair game. I agree. But America's never been in a situation where people don't want to come here. Not to
Yep.
mention the 70 plus countries, including my country that was already on the first list, but now this new expanded list of immigrants who can no longer come here. There are no visas, right? So what white people are seeing right now is what immigrants have always known. It's what Black people in particular have always known of this
Hmm.
country, and now they're experiencing it and processing it. It's an important to note that white people can do one of two things. They can be overwhelmed, pause, paralysis, be stuck, sad, frustrated, fragility, or they can wake the fuck up and take action, both big and small, moving forward.
Can I ask you about that? Because, my wife gets on me sometimes because listen, because of how I grew up,
Mhm.
when you deal with a bully, you have to push back. You have to. Like
Yeah.
today, Tim Waltz. Oh, Mr. President, can we tone down the rhetoric? Like, dude, pull your head out of your ass. You think this guy that assaults women is a convicted felon? You think he's going to turn it down? Oh, thanks, Tim Waltz, for the nice letter. I'm glad you wrote me that letter. Oh, I've done a lot of thought and prayer, and I'm really going to tone the rhetoric down. I mean, it's so stupid. They just
Donald
drive
Trump,
me bananas.
they do, but Donald Trump this week just said, fuck off or fuck you to a union worker.
He flipped them off, and then they suspended
Yeah,
the union worker.
exactly. So this is all about power and control. You
It
can't for
is.
2 seconds have your whole campaign be about union because union blah 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 and then fuck that person off. And now
Yeah.
that union worker who actually should have what he said was wrong. Okay. I will say what he said was wrong. That he is protecting pedophiles is wrong. He should have just said you are the pedophile.
Yes. Well,
Right? You
both
know,
things are true.
right. No, no, no. I can't, but none of that stuff should happen. But what we're seeing is to your point, to what your wife is saying, how people want to show up. Now, I think it's important to have boundaries to how someone shows up. I'm not going to sit down in a room and have a conversation with someone who's with KKK or the Proud Boys. That may change in the future, but right now, I don't want to do that. That's like not healthy for me.
No, what? Can I ask you a question? I mean, interrupt you.
Yeah.
This is what I think. This is. I think even now there's a lot of white people that are still sitting in their privilege, ignoring it. Like I'm gonna. I told my friends. I posted 2 days ago. I'm gonna post about this, and if you don't like it, you can unfriend me because I'm gonna stand on business. I don't care. If you're gonna
Yeah.
talk about the traffic at high school and all this little bullshit and oh the Target sales, I don't give a shit. I'm way past
Yeah.
that. If you're gonna watch people get shot in the face and you're not even gonna post about it because you're worried about it, then unfriend me. What I don't understand is not that I don't understand is seeing all these white people just like, well, they just seem
There's
like
nothing I can do.
they don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yes. Okay. So you ready? The goal is to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Comfortable being uncomfortable. So for those who need to know what that means, I grew up in Sacramento, California, in a predominantly white neighborhood
Oh.
because I had the privilege, now I live in Oakland, California, but I had the privilege of having two privileged parents, meaning that they were both my dad as a retired lawyer and a diplomat. My mom was a retired executive. My mom was also on the COINTELPRO list. So I knew a lot, but I was able to live in a neighborhood where I went to a predominantly white school. And we
Hmm.
know predominantly white schools, public schools in particular, are better because why? The neighborhoods you live in, the tax dollars, the access to books. It's
They're
the
not
school I went to
redlined.
was exactly. So it's essentially like a private school. So when I went to preschool, there may have been one other Black person, but the other Black person was my twin sister. When I
Oh.
went to my K through 8 school, there were two other Black people. And again, one was my twin sister.
Hmm.
It wasn't until I went to high school that there were more Black people there, more people of color. But I bring that specific example up because when I was a preschooler, I had to learn how to live in a white dominant culture. The benefit of a white person is that you don't have to learn any other culture except yours. But as a BIPOC individual, you have to learn white culture. So what's happening right now since the murder of George Floyd is that white people are realizing one, they have a culture and white supremacy is part of it. And two, they have to learn other things that aren't normal to them, that aren't part of their foundation.
Yeah.
The difference is that I've had many, many years of experience doing that. And white people, it was last week, 5 years ago, or whatever incident in their life where they started to realize to learn stuff.
Mhm.
Now, when you are in a position to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable, that means you are never going to know what you don't know because there's so much shit out there. You're never going to know. Like someone can say something to me and it's fine. And someone can say something to someone else and it's not because we all have intersectionality. We all have different lived experience, which leads to
Mhm.
the third thing that white people have to do and everyone have to do in general when you want to learn and unlearn different people, cultures, history, whatever it may be, is you have to be willing to apologize. And that's the part that makes white people in particular the most uncomfortable. So if a white
Mhm.
person comes and touches my hair and I say, don't do that, just say sorry. Don't spiral, don't spin, don't be defensive, don't say,
That
it's
happens to
all of
you?
those things all the time.
They
White
touch your
people,
hair?
all the time, whether it's my natural curly hair or when I have my
Who the hell
braids
does
in,
that? That's insane.
every, to you it is because who you are as a white person. But when white people know they have access or feel they have access to my black body, they will do whatever they want. I
Oh
never go up
God.
to a white person to say like, oh my God, your hair looks great today.
I can't even
But
imagine that.
I know, and it's what we call microaggression or covert
Yeah.
racism, right? Overt racism is,
Subliminal. Yeah.
yeah, the overt racism is what you've mentioned, the lynching, modern day lynching, what we saw happen to George Floyd, the list goes on and on. It's like that physical stuff. You can't be here, whites only, fountain. That's the overt stuff. The covert stuff is, oh, you talk so eloquently. Oh, you're a doctor. It's like those types of things that are actually are around more than
Yeah.
before, right?
Do you think, one of the things that I had one of these, some of the people on the far left, like I call them the blue MAGA, right? This, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein because Harris didn't check 90, all 100 boxes. She was only 98 in this one issue, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And my concern is there is this, still this desire that if we vote for the Democrats in the midterms, I know I'm making this back to politics, that not that everything's going to be perfect, but that we're going to stop what's happening. My concern is that white America is going to be going back to being complacent and saying, "Oh, I'm not as uncomfortable as I was. I can manage this." And once again, we're going to kick the can down the road. Am I wrong?
So no, so to your earlier point, let's go back to intersectionality and uh Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
And I thought Harris was. I mean, I still got a
Yeah,
sticker from her somewhere. I mean, she would have been
yeah.
incredible.
I was a co-founder of Disabled Voters for Harris, but there's intersectionality. Kamala Harris, woman, black woman,
Yeah,
Caribbean woman, Indian woman, um, woman, right? But let's go back to Hillary Clinton, white woman, also against Donald Trump. Who won? Donald Trump, right? So when we go into intersectionality, America's also not ready for a woman to
right.
be president, right? Because when we go back into white supremacy, and this is again why the first chapter of my book is White Women Are Exhausting, white women have been conditioned to listen to their father, their partner, if they're hetero, their uncle,
I,
right? And support
yep.
them because proximity to whiteness is more powerful than the gender they have as women when they can understand what an
Hmm.
experience like being an immigrant or experience of being a black person would be. They would have a transferable skill set. They still choose whiteness. And the person who has the most power in the white supremacy food chain is the white guy,
I
right?
also I also think because a lot of people ask me that question, and why do black people vote for Trump? I mean, I well, and I can't speak for black people because I'm not black, but my understanding
Thank
was,
you for sharing that because
yeah,
otherwise I would just stereotype you as a black person.
I identify as a white man. I think for I don't want to go on tangent, but for the black people and some of the Latinos, it was proximity to whiteness. For the Latino men, it was a lot of misogyny. But for the white women, I think it's very clear they buy into the white male patriarchy
Mhm,
because they go to the white Jesus church and they're told to not like gay people and abortions.
mhm.
And there's one scripture that says you're supposed to submit to your white husband and make a babies and walk around barefoot and eat bonbons. And they just buy into the patriarchy. And when you look at, and for me, and I'm not saying this as everybody, But when you look at a lot of the MAGA women, they're either they're living in Alabama in somebody's backyard, right? Let's just be
Mhm.
real. That's his demographic. Or there's these little prissy little white women that have never had a bad day in their life. No one's ever talked bad to them. They've never
Mhm.
struggled. You see one of the two. You don't see, I haven't seen a whole lot of the middle. It's one of the two. It's either like wicked privilege or they're really dirt poor. And they buy into the patriarchy because they've never, and my wife was having this discussion with somebody. She's like, or somebody commented on Facebook and said, well, I just don't understand. I want law and order. This doesn't make any sense. Like, you voted for a convicted felon. And it goes back to what you said. She doesn't even realize he assaulted women, he molested little girls,
Yeah,
he's a pedophile, he didn't rent the
right.
black people. But she's like, I just want law and order. Like, no, you don't. You just want the white man to impose law and order.
Right, because Americans are conditioned that the white guy's in power. That's why there's a lot that happened, obviously, with Barack Obama. But again, he was also half white. So we were like halfway there. But the way it works, I should say that I am openly black. But the way that it works is that, like, I'm also part white. I'm also part white, but I'm
Let me see
openly
your
black.
birth certificate. I don't believe you.
Right. But the thing is, we have to go back to the one drop blood rule in America that also happened as a result of the end of enslavement in this country. If you have one drop of black blood, however it is, you are black in America. You don't even get the privilege to be white. So Barack Obama didn't even have he's 50-50. He could have gone on a white ticket, but white supremacy doesn't allow that. And also the systems and
Mm.
structures don't allow that because they don't see someone who is white for him, right? So, there's that. There are black people who look more white because, we all have different complexions and shades and all of that that's there. But that goes down into it. I can't like with my like a lot of the health stuff that I navigate, I have a lot of rare conditions. Actually, by the way, I should have done this earlier and I forgot because we just really got to this conversation. So there's folks right now who are like, how can she be disabled? So for the FOMO folks, let me start by just describing what I look like. So this will help you realize why you may have questions for those who are listening. I am a light-skinned Black woman. I am someone who has hazel eyes. I have long golden braids. I'm wearing a t-shirt right now that says, my love language is dismantling white supremacy, sitting in my office. That is what I call an image description for people who don't have the privilege of seeing your wonderful Dragon Ball Z collection behind you. That
Oh,
you
yes. And my
have.
stitches. See?
Yeah. Oh, and your stitches. Oh, your stitches are behind your head. Oh, yeah, no, it's fantastic. Stitch in a wonderful, what is that, like a pajama outfit, suit, Stitch?
Yeah, it's like Santa Claus. He's got like snowman.
That's, yep. There we go. And the slippers, the snowman
Uh,
slippers are great.
and then I got
Um,
Stitch over here. Yeah.
I am also a stunner. My pronouns are bad bitch or she, her. But I am very pretty and I have pretty privilege. I love that. And I bring all that up because um, I have dynamic disability. So I have a parent and non-apparent disability. Sometimes I walk with a cane, sometimes I don't. It all depends. I have this rare condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a rare connective tissue disorder. My body doesn't know what to do with collagen. My joints dislocate and
Oh
sublux,
no.
they partially dislocate every day. I live in a lot of chronic pain, a lot of pain, a lot of pain. I have a ADA placard.
Mm.
People see me and they're like, how can this beautiful, stylish woman use this placard? Blah, blah, blah. I bring all this up because when you are in a position of privilege and intersectionality, you always see what other folks don't see, which
Mm.
is what some white folks are seeing right now for the first time. These nuances, right, of what is coming up in society, what is coming up with power and control, what is coming up with the fact that I can't. Barack Obama couldn't be a white president because of how things come up, or how no one will see that I can identify with some white people with the white people in my family. No one's going to see that in the
Mhm.
package that I have. They'll make the assumption to go to the superior group, which is white people. Now,
Mm.
connecting to your other point about white people and what they do, one of the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome I have makes my body think I am having a heart attack every day. And I live with the symptoms of a heart attack. I haven't had a heart attack and died at any moment in time. So I could no longer be the person who could protest in the streets, but I had to change my activism. And I do that
Mm.
through social media, my podcast, my book, and what have you. What a lot of white people think is that they can't do anything. But I'm in pain all the time. I could die at any moment in time, and I still find a way to show up. You, Paul, are a white guy. You don't, like I said earlier, you don't have to do any of this. You still find a way to show up. But it's really more so the small daily actions that are needed, opposed to feeling like you changed policy, somewhere to get to a better situation where there can be law and order. Law and order isn't necessarily a bad thing, but law and order is a bad thing when it only affects certain groups, right? Law and order means that white guy who shot Renee point blank is going to get away with stuff because Cash Patel's fucked up FBI has come in to take something over, and we no longer have regulatory things happening in our own government that would make sure that there would be civil rights that would happen for this person who's also a protected class, being a person from the LGBTQ plus community. That's not going to happen
Mm.
because of how Donald Trump and co, and I call him Donald and co, has changed so many things within the government to get to where we are today. Now, if law and order meant that we are making sure everyone is protected in the same way, everyone has access to healthcare, everyone has access to, you know, be an immigrant and come to this country that was founded by immigrants, by the way, then that stuff is hopeful. If I could call law enforcement confidently, I'm a homeowner in Oakland, California, which is a very hard thing to do because it's one of the most expensive markets in America. But
Mhm.
if someone broke into my home and I felt that I could call law enforcement to come in and protect me, that would be great. But I don't feel that. And so I don't do that, right?
Well, a
Because
lot,
that person could
yeah.
say, because I live in a very privileged neighborhood. So they could think I'm the person who breaks into my own home. They will make me prove that I live here. Had like time to get a new water heater. And they're like, well, do you own this home? Bitch, I called you. I called you because it's time for me to get a new water heater. I'm really
Yeah.
excited about this water heater, by the way. But whether it being a woman, right, or being a black person, but probably being a black person, how can I be the homeowner of this? Or clearly, maybe the man needs to come and handle this, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think a
And
lot of people worship the police officers and they don't criticize them. They're part of
right.
the problem. I was at the protest on Saturday and I asked, there was this one MAGA
What's it?
lady,
What city? Which one?
was in Dublin.
Okay.
And I was talking to the cop. He's like, everybody here is looking for attention. And I'm like, no, they're protesting because a woman was shot in the face by ICE agents. This is what the police told me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they're the problem.
here's
Not all of them, but a lot of them voted for this guy in the White House. They are part of the white mediocre man with the small penis. I need a gun to be an alpha male mentality. I mean, there's this, and that's what gets me is there's this the thing that like Charlie Kirk appeased to, right? That if you show emotions, if you have empathy, that you're some kind of sissy lala man. Example: the police chief up in Portland the other day. He was like emotional, right? Because like this lady was shot in the face with a 6-year-old. Anybody that has a heart, but when you go on Fox News, is this the kind of guy you want leading? We want a strong man. No, you want a white man with no emotions that just wants to act like slave owners. Because that's when I hear that,
yeah,
that's what I think of is law and order. That's going back to what we talked about.
yeah.
This is a Christian nation. No, it means that white man rules over everybody, and that's their version of law and order. Again, go back to January 6th.
So she
1,500
also,
white people were convicted,
yeah,
and they were all
yeah.
pardoned by a felon white man.
So Renee had multiple kids, she had teenagers too, which I think is important to note. But here's the thing with law enforcement. You may or may not know this, your listeners may or may not know this, but law enforcement started with slave patrols in this country. So slave patrols were the first form of policing to keep property, enslaved people at their plantation. When the Emancipation Proclamation happened, uh, law like essentially 6 months later, enforcement started to turn. So those slave patrols turned into the sheriffs and the police departments and all the other stuff. But before that happened, the Ku Klux Klan was formed December 24th, 1865, the same year of Juneteenth, right? So when everyone in Texas learned about the Emancipation Proclamation that happened in 1863. So Ku Klux Klan also started policing. and keeping people in their space and place, right? So that's why we hear the stories of the first Jewish family or a Black family that moved into a white only neighborhood. And what happened? They bombed and crossed and all the other
Isn't
stuff.
isn't that about the time that Strong Thomberg was on the was it on the court, and he ruled that even after 100 years that black people still weren't citizens even though they were born here and they were like third, fourth generation? Wasn't that, am I wrong about the timing?
Oh, yeah. It's all so all of this is Jim Crow era stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because Jim Crow era started in 1865. And for all for separation. Now, we can keep it central to California, and I'll just use this as an easy example. Law enforcement in LA, everyone loves LA. Everyone around the world loves LA. The primary members of law enforcement in LA are Ku Klux Klan members, KKK members. KKK was the recruiting source for law enforcement, particularly in the South, but all around America, but particularly in the South. Okay. So those are the foundations. Now we fast forward to today. Law enforcement is frat. They're basically frat boys, when it comes down to it. You have to believe and you don't sell anyone out no matter what happens, no matter what fucked up shit you did. You never, ever do that. And if you do, you get ousted all the way down to internal affairs. Now, for folks who are like, oh, Blue Lives Matter and all the other stuff, okay, fine. Ask a law enforcement agent for the names, 2, 3, 5 names of and badge numbers of their fellow law enforcement agents that have harmed a Black or brown person, beating up, excessive force, murdering, shooting, whatever. Ask them for that. They will not give it to you
No.
because it's a protection, right?
Yeah.
And so
It's
if
the
law,
thin blue line of it's like a bro club is what it is.
it is a bro club. Yeah, exactly. So I don't have the privilege of getting the same benefits as a white person, right? Because I know that as a Black person with law enforcement, like I said earlier, I could be shot down. I could be shot down while I'm in my own home. I could be shot down while I'm boiling water. I could be shot down while I'm sleeping. I could be shot down standing outside of my home. There's so many things that can happen because we're viewed as the enemy, just like KKK, just like slave patrols. It's all the same
It,
thing.
it's ironic that if I'm not mistaken, I think it's is it 60% of domestic violence is police officers? It's pretty high.
Mhm.
And when
So
you
I,
well, one more thing real quick is and the other thing is when you look at the ICE agents,
mhm.
almost not all of them, almost all of them are mediocre white men. They're pissed off, they're angry, three
Yes,
percenters, they probably would have been Klan members, they're almost all
or
MAGA
support it,
supporters.
or
Right.
identify
All of them.
with white supremacy, right?
Yes.
Because we can, like you said earlier, with how votes came through with Black people, right? And with Latin, Hispanic, Latinx people, it's the same thing. Proximity to whiteness is there.
Yeah.
Now, with Black people and in particular, what a lot of white people don't understand is that when we were enslaved, you had Black people who were in the field and you had Black people who were in the house. People who were in the
Mm.
house had more privilege. Eventually, they started becoming lighter and lighter because the master of that house, the enslaver, was raping and in some rare, very rare cases, having consensual relationships with enslaved Black women. And so they wanted to protect them and they knew they'd have more protection in the house. But what
Mhm.
Black, a lot of white people don't realize about Black people in America is that that has also impacted Black culture, Black community,
Mhm.
and those who feel superior in Black communities to Black people than others.
Mhm.
So, for example, the Black folks who voted for Donald Trump feel more like they were in the House. They had more
Proximity to
power,
whiteness.
exactly, and proximity to whiteness. The Black folks who feel otherwise, it's not the case. We have also, there's a lot of Black and brown fraternities, but Black fraternities in general, there are fraternities that had what we call a brown paper bag test. So if you were
Hmm.
the color of a brown paper bag or lighter, you could be part of the fraternity or sorority.
Really?
That's why we have, yep, we all
Huh.
have private clubs and groups and also neighborhoods that did the same thing. So
Hmm.
we have forms of colorism within our culture too.
Hmm.
And there could be people, regardless of what their complexion looks like, a deeper,
Hmm.
beautiful, darker complexion, a lighter, also beautiful complexion. However they identify, they want that proximity to whiteness. So that's why you have a history of people and you're learning that like folks could pass to be white. And one of those individuals was my grandmother. She was someone
Mm,
who could pass, and that allowed
that's
different
interesting.
access and privilege for her in her tiny town outside of New Orleans, which afforded more privilege for my mother, who has light skin privilege and green eyes, who was able to
Yeah,
go to Stanford, right? And I get the benefits of these things. And so, but all of that is still a product of white supremacy because the division was there.
yeah.
Now, the other thing that I will just say that a lot of white folks don't realize is that when we think about that corporal punishment, that horrific punishment of what you mentioned earlier, the raping, the whipping, the, you know, the lynching, a lot of that was done by Black men because they were the different types of overseers. There's different layers of overseers on plantations. Some of those also turned into law enforcement, but that were in that position, and they were told by their enslaver, their master, to whip, to murder, to harm, to cut something off of the body, and do this in a way to instill
Mm,
fear. And those individuals also identify with proximity to whiteness from their line and their family, right? And so there's a lot of layers
yeah,
into that. It's you could do the same for Latin American folks. Cubans will vote differently than black. I mean, there's so much that's in there
yeah.
because people want what the American dream, and that is proximity to whiteness.
It is. I saw a documentary. It was on Amazon. It was about faith, politics, and the rise of Trump or something like that. Did you see that? It was in Charleston, South Carolina, and
Oh, am I
it,
right? Down?
but I have to. I'll email it to you. But
Okay.
basically, they were telling the story, and this is Charleston, so I'm not familiar with history. But they would actually send slaves to the city and they would write out these notes on a piece of paper and they would charge per day to keep their slave, how much it would be to shackle them per day, if it was to whip them, how much it cost, and then how much to put salt in the wound if you wanted that. It was
Mhm.
like a cost. It was, I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like this was the actual city. I was like, holy shit. But
Yeah. But I
white,
mean,
what I think what I've noticed is I know we're getting kind of long here, but I kind of view this where we are as in the Matrix. A lot of people don't know this. The Matrix was actually written by a black woman.
right, right.
And we, as white people, live in the matrix, right? We're sold this bullshit American exceptionalism, the picket fence. You have guns and bald eagles and American flag diapers and worship the flag and pray to the flag. And if you don't like it, you can leave and all that crap, right? And then, like, you're woke, right? You're unplugged from the matrix and you see the world for what it is. You're like, you know what? For everybody else that ain't white, it's pretty shitty. And you have, was it Cyrus was his name? That went back into the matrix? And he
Mhm.
wanted to go back into the Matrix. He's like, I don't like what this is. I know that the Matrix isn't real. I don't care. I'll betray my friends, Agent Smith. Just put me back in there because ignorance is bliss. And I think that's what we're seeing now is a lot of people that have been unplugged, whether it's
Mhm.
through George Floyd or
Mhm.
Ahmaud Arbery or January
Let
6th or
yeah.
any other Rodney King, and they're like,
Mhm.
oh, this is pretty bad. I don't want to deal with it. And they just want to run back into the matrix. And I feel like Donald Trump is Agent Smith. I will put you back into segregation. I will put you back into Jim Crow. Just put me in power and I'll make sure everything's okay. And I feel like in many ways we're living in the matrix because we've been sold a lie since day one that we're great. And when I look at like Black History Month online, right? All these white people, I want White History Month. I'm like, bitch, it's been White History Month since 1619. Spare me your shit. But it's like
All day, every year.
anything that goes against their version of American exceptionalism, they
Mhm.
don't want to hear it because it
Mhm.
forces them to see that this country isn't what they've been told. And I tell them, and if you don't like it, you can ship your ass back to England because that's how I feel about it.
If they know that. But as a black person in America, that's my everyday experience. I'm told every
Yeah,
day I don't belong here. I'm told every single day I don't belong here. And I'm inferior, again, intersectionality, because I'm a woman, I'm inferior as a black person, I'm inferior as a disabled person. None of that serves the purpose and the dream of supremacism and white supremacy, right? And
yeah,
so, what some white people are complaining about is my daily lived experience. And
that's
you today are now just getting it. But I'm 43. So, my entire life has been this.
that's why I got so hard on Tim Waltz a couple weeks ago. And this guy got mad. I'm like, look, he's like, well, Paul, that's a bullshit take with Tim Waltz. I'm like, Tim Waltz got a fraction of an inch of what it's like to be black. This man
Mhm.
wanted to be the vice president of this country. and he's running away the moment somebody said something mean to him. Black people don't have the luxury of running away. I mean,
No.
Governor Whitmer didn't run away when she had death threats. Hakeem Jeffries didn't run away. And listen, I got my criticism of Jeffries, but he's still doing his job. Cory Booker didn't run away. Obama didn't run away. Like, Michael Fanone is still fighting. Harry Dent from January 6th. All these people are getting threats.
Jasmine Crockett. I
Every
mean,
day, Jasmine Crockett gets
yeah.
threats. They're not running away. So you're damn right.
AOC. I
I'm going
mean,
to hold
yeah.
Tim Walz to the same standard. This guy wanted to be the second most powerful person in the country, and he can't handle somebody calling his kid the R word, which is deplorable. But you're not good now. You're just going to leave office because people were mean to you. Like, come on, man. Like, stand on business. If you're going to stand for it, and that's what gets me is with white
So,
people. They just when they get a fraction of an inch of what they get, they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I'm going to leave this country. I'm like, are you serious? Are you kidding me?
so let me, I know we're wrapping up, but like
Yeah.
the first day of Donald Trump in office. So, you know, when his inauguration day was MLK Day, I chose MLK Day. I took the day off. I posted something on my social media, my Substack, and then I just signed off from everything and I just watched funny shit all day. I was watching a whole bunch of SNLs because I knew it was coming for me. And so I come here I am in my office where I am right now. On Substack, I this N word me was told to go back to my plantation. On my Instagram post, it went viral. MAGA had entered the chat. Um, I get called disabled monkey bitch more than I think anyone should be called. But I applaud them for intersectionality, right? Of what they're doing. So there's that. Then I'm, in my work email where you and I, Paul, are emailing. And there is an email from Undead Shotgun White at gmail.com that said, YT, if anyone wants to email him, said, she lost, he won, get over it. And my out of office was still on for MLK holiday. Replied again with a pixelated video of a burning cross and a man in front of it screaming, release me. And that was my first day as Donald Trump as president.
Mhm.
I have every right in the world on top of my health stuff because I can't have stress. If I have stress, I have a higher risk of a heart attack. And me and my cardiologist, we have a plan. I refuse to die dismantling white supremacy. It's not going to happen. It won't happen. But I have every fucking excuse in the world to not do that. That day, I could say, like, you know what? It's not worth it. I'm not going to do it. But I still am here doing the work that it's not even going to have the impact of you. Like right now, with my new podcast called Humane Rights, I have a YouTube channel. I have maybe 79 subscribers. We just dropped last week.
Mm.
And in 7 months, you were able to get a plaque,
Well, yeah.
right? Because you have white male privilege. I don't. I'm still going to have to prove myself as a doctor, someone on the Forbes list, as an international expert in dismantling white supremacy to get followers, to get into a position that actually could make my life easier and have more of a platform to do things like you. But I'm not the white guy.
Hmm.
You know, that's like case in point. And yet it still doesn't stop me. White people have the benefit to stop whenever they want to.
Right.
And it's not going to impact who they are as a person. But for me, if I said, hey, I'm giving up, well, Dr. Cadet is she, whatever, she blah, 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 right? So I want to keep going and I will keep going. But I think it's important that folks know that you have the privilege to show up in ways that can be more impactful than me. And as much as that sucks, it's a wonderful, really great thing. So ask yourself, what are you doing every day to act? How are you holding yourself accountable? How are you communicating what you know and don't know? And how are you being transparent about learning and unlearning? Learning is easy to do.
Yeah.
The unlearning part is hard because what you thought is right and true isn't true. Like right now, someone learned something from our conversation. They
Hmm.
had no idea about something you said or something I said, which I think is great.
Yeah.
But with this information you have, how are you going to move forward?
I know we're running a little long here. What I would say is this for the white people that are listening to here: if you're still refusing to have those conversations with your mom, with your dad, with your cousin, with your sister, if you're refusing to phone on Facebook, that is the definition of privilege. So
Mhm,
if you're going to ask, what can I do? Do that.
mhm,
Talk to those parents. And you know what? If you value those relationships with somebody that votes for a child predator and a convicted felon and a rapist? Is that really the relationships you want just because you're blood related to them? Like, I would rather have this conversation right now than honestly with my own brother who voted for this guy
Yeah.
because he was
Yeah.
afraid the black woman was going to take his guns, and that was just a bridge too far.
Mm,
And for all you white people, I'm just being honest. You got to look in the mirror. And I'll close with it, and I'll leave you the last word. But in the movie V is for Vendetta, which I absolutely love that movie, and he's playing that scene in the news station, and he's like, "Yeah, you can blame the government, but also look in the mirror and blame yourselves because you stood by and watched it happen in silence." Because Martin Luther King said, "We're not going to remember the words of our enemies, rather the silence of our friends." And right now, there's too many people that are silent, and I always equate it to George Floyd, right? The Republicans right now are Derek Chauvin, and the Republicans are the officers that stood by and watched it happen. And for everyone that's white, you're just like the three officers that are watching it happen because you're not willing to be uncomfortable. You're just as complicit as the people in the White House that are supporting this grand wizard. I'll let you have the last point.
yeah. But you can change that. White
We
people can
could.
change that. They can
Yep.
change that moving forward. And that's the thing that I believe is incredibly powerful. So just just keep moving forward. Otherwise, pick up your platinum card to being a white supremacist. Pick it up and lean into that, because a white supremacist is someone who's xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic. They believe in the patriarchy. They don't want to do any of the work. And
Yeah.
the fucked up part is that even with white people who do a fraction of what I do, it'll have more of an impact, because that's also how white supremacy works. So do it. If you want to keep learning and unlearning from me, get my book. It's where all books are sold. White Supremacy is All Around. If you like this very annoying voice of mine, I also did the audiobook. Sarcasm notes are in there, so that's exciting. You can follow me on social media at Change Cadet, the word change and CADET, and subscribe and listen to Humane Rights, my new podcast. The first episode is up with W. Kamau Bell.
Oh,
And you
I
can
love
follow
him.
social media. Yeah, you can follow social media at Humane Rights Podcast. So, yeah, and people are welcome to slide in my DMs anytime. I'm happy to learn and unlearn. If you get too
Just no
much
burning
work, I'll let
crosses,
you know.
please.
No burning crosses. No,
God.
none of that shit. Please don't do that. But I'm happy
I'm
to help
not
people
laughing. I'm
learn
just
and
like,
unlearn. You
I
gotta
can't.
laugh though. I mean, I have to
Jesus.
use so much sarcasm and
Oh
humor to
God.
do this. And so um if your love language is dismantling white supremacy, like show up as t-shirts in my shop if you really want it. It's great for protests. But what I do want to say to you, Paul, is you don't have to, and you are. So I have a post up that says if white people wanted to, they would.
Yep.
And you are like, yeah, no, I know. And that's why I'm doing it. And so thank you for that. I'm always happy to have conversations with you.
Yeah.
And to you and everyone else, just really just keep being amazing.
All right. Talk to you later. All right. Bye bye. Let's see if I
Bye.
can turn this on.